Hey everybody, this is Steve of Nonprofit Ally, and today we're going to talk about the exciting world of your nonprofit bylaws. Yeah, not probably that exciting of a topic for many of you, but a necessity, right? If it wasn't a necessity, you wouldn't be watching this video. So we're going to go over the bylaws, why you want to have them, and what you want to put in them. First of all, let's just describe what bylaws are. And it's very simple. Bylaws are basically the operating manual of your nonprofit. So don't confuse that with your policies and procedures. It's not your P&Ps. Those are different. Your policies and procedures go into detail about hiring, firing, compensation, per diem, things like that, use of vehicles. That is not what your bylaws are for. Your bylaws are the operating manual for your corporation, for your nonprofit. Now, some states do require that you have bylaws, but many, like Alaska, where I am at, we filed our articles of incorporation. No bylaws were necessary at that time. So from state to state, it changes and it's different. So check with your state, and I'll have a link below here so you can check with your state to find out if indeed bylaws are required for you to incorporate. And as far as the IRS goes, because I know a lot of you are trying to get your 501c3, which is your charitable nonprofit status, the IRS does not require specific language to be in your bylaws, but they are certainly going to be looking for certain language in your bylaws, and that's a little hard to differentiate. But I'm going to tell you in this video what you need to have in your bylaws in order to satisfy what the IRS is looking for. Now, right away, what the IRS will be looking for is they're going to be looking for specific language. Well, not specific language, right? Not required language, but they're going to be looking in your purpose statement. They're going to be looking to see if you have indemnification. They're going to be looking to see if you have a conflict of interest clause written in there, and they're going to want to know your accounting period. So let's go over all this. All right. So here's what you need to start with when you're writing your bylaws. And first of all, don't write your bylaws from scratch. There are samples everywhere, and I have 4 or 5 different samples on my website. So, and I'll include a link to them below this video and a link to the blog where we outline how to write your nonprofit bylaws with links to downloadable sample bylaws for you. So don't start from scratch. It's a lot of work. First of all, your bylaws are going to want to know pretty much everything about your board members. So include in your bylaws, let's title this, bylaws, include in your bylaws board member information, right? Now this info is going to include, things you can include within this are the minimum number of board members that you can have, and some states will require that you have a minimum number of board members, and the maximum number of board members, that could be written in your bylaws. The voting procedures of board members, right? Do you need a simple majority? Do you need 2/3 in order to, how many people, in order to pass something, right? So the voting procedures that you're going to follow during your board meetings. The term of office for your board members, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year. So the terms of office for them. Termination of a board member. How, if indeed it comes up, do you alleviate a board member of their position? And what are the procedures for that? You may want to put in your bylaws how many meetings you're going to have per year. And you're going to want to also define when a meeting meets its quorum, right? So each meeting is going to have a minimum number of participants in order to be an official meeting. So you're going to have a quorum set in your bylaws. And also there's going to be upon occasion where you might have to have an unscheduled meeting or an emergency meeting. So put in your bylaws some type of procedure where a board member can call an emergency meeting about some situation or some topic. You could also put in there under board members are the board officers, your president, your treasurer, your secretary, as well as your vice president, right? Or you can call them the chair and co-chair or vice chair. Right, so and those are things you should have in your bylaws. You don't necessarily have all those, and some of those could be shared responsibilities, but make sure you do include that. Outside of that, you may want to add committees to your bylaws. It's not absolutely necessary, but many people do include committees. The thing with this is don't get carried away. Don't try to think of every committee you're ever going to need, because then what you're going to have to do is, you follow your bylaws, you're going to have every committee you put in your bylaws. Some good examples, though, are you probably want to have a finance committee. You may want to have a personnel and or a policy committee. There's some basic committees that all nonprofits, all corporations have, and a lot of those are stated in their bylaws. You may want to have an executive committee. That's beyond the scope of this video here, but I do describe executive committees in the links below. You can find that on the blog post about bylaws. So committees, you can have those listed in there. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to have in there is your statement of purpose, what it is and why you do it. Now, this is important. Your statement of purpose, depending on what you write in your statement of purpose, is going to determine whether you qualify for 501(c)(3) status with the federal government. So they give, this is nice, they don't require certain language, but they give you an example of language they would like to see in your purpose statement. And I include that in some of the links that are below. If you download my sample bylaws, you go to the blog post I have posted, you will see a link to, as well as a cut and paste version of the statement of purpose that the IRS would like to see, not required, but like to see in your bylaws. Now, you may want to put in there if you're going to have staff on your nonprofit, and if you do, who that staff may be. This is not totally required in your bylaws, but you may want to state you're going to hire staff, and you may want to put the hiring and firing procedures of staff in your bylaws. But that could also be in your P&Ps. Now, here's something you do need to definitely include. If you are going to have a membership, you're going to have people sign up, become members of your nonprofit. They now support the Watershed Coalition of Greater Cleveland, right? So, and you're going to have members sign up. You're going to have in there their membership rights, their privileges, and all the information about being a member, a membership organization. Now, if you're not going to have a membership, it's still a good idea to put in your bylaws that you are not a member organization. Members, typically, their rights and privileges, they're going to be the ones who vote in your board members, right? They may have to approve any amendments to these bylaws. So members have a lot of rights and a lot of privileges, and you need to make sure if you have a membership, you put it in your bylaws, some of the details about that. All right, so here's another one the IRS is going to want to see. It's your conflict of interest statement. Now, when you're filling out your 501(c)(3), you're going to find that the IRS may be asking quite a lot of questions about the conflict of interest. It's not because they're scrutinizing or they don't trust you, but they just want to be assured that what you're doing with your nonprofit is not set up to benefit a specific group of people, relatives, right, or friends, so that you're going to have these checks and balances in your bylaws that assure that whatever you do, whoever you hire, whoever you contract to, whoever's on your board, et cetera, right, that if you hire them to, they're going to plow, they own a snowplow business, and they're going to plow your parking lot every year, and you contract with them, that if you're going to contract with them, you're going to go in your bylaws and you're going to assure that you follow your conflict of interest statement inside your bylaws to assure that you are not having a conflict of interest. You're not paying them 10 times more than you are someone else, and somehow it benefits them because they're on the board and they have a plowing business. So as long as you have a conflict of interest statement in there and you follow it, you should be okay. Now, some other things they're going to want to see are indemnification. I can't speak and write this word at the same time. Indemnification, which is basically your liability for your board. So it's basically stating that if indeed something happened with your corporation and somebody wanted to sue you or some legal matter happened, that the individual board members are not liable for the actions of the corporation. So there's more to it than that. It's a legal term, so I do define it a little bit again in the blog post that I have linked down below here, but basically you want some type of indemnification clause within your bylaws. A couple more things they're going to want to see. The IRS is going to want to see that you have a fiscal year defined, your accounting period, right? So your accounting period can be calendar year or fiscal year, and the difference between those is basically a calendar year is January through December. A fiscal year could be whatever you want to set it up as. So you could have a fiscal year that ends in June, or ends in June and starts July 1st, so it goes from July 1 to June to the end of June. That could be your fiscal year. The nonprofit I started has a fiscal year from April 1st to the end of March, so it'd be March 31st, 31 days in March. And we did that for a specific reason. So you can do that. You don't have to have a fiscal year that goes from January through December, but in either case, just state it. It's a one-liner, and again, that's in the sample bylaws. And not most importantly, a lot of this is all important, but really important is to include a clause in your bylaws that tell whoever the board member is, whoever the board is, how to amend your bylaws. So how, if indeed, many, many years from now, something in the bylaws needs to get changed, you decide that you change your quorum numbers, you want to add a membership, you want to change the terms of office or whatever, that there is some way to go in and amend your bylaws. Maybe you need to fix something, right? So there's some way to go in and do that. Now, so that's a basic structure, a basic outline of what you want to include in your bylaws. So here's some tips. When you make your bylaws, keep to the basics. Keep to the basics. It's very easy as you're writing bylaws and article and your sub-articles and your all these different categories in your bylaws to kind of get carried away and be like, well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And how do we do this? And how do we hire? And how do we fire? And what about per diem? And how much should we pay? And a lot of that goes into your P&Ps, your procedures and your policies, your manual that you're going to have to run the business. Not your operating manual, your bylaws. This is how your board functions, your corporation functions through your bylaws. But if you're dealing with personnel, vehicle use, facility care, things like that, that's your P&Ps. Okay, so that's different. So keep the bylaws simple. It's important because if you get too carried away in your bylaws and you get too detailed, let's say you get so detailed in that you have a membership, right? And your membership, oh, my dog's getting a little crazy over here. Sorry about that. Let's say your membership rules say that in order to elect a new board member or change your bylaws, amend your bylaws, you need two-thirds of your entire membership need to vote in favor of something. Well, if you word it that way, that two-thirds of your entire membership needs to vote, and you have 200 members scattered across the country, chances are you may not even get two-thirds to participate in the vote. In which case you've just tied your hands and you're going to have a very hard time even amending your bylaws, because if that is indeed how you amend your bylaws, by two-thirds votes of an entire membership, and you can't get two-thirds of your membership to even vote, you've successfully tied your hands. So be careful with how much detail you put into your bylaws. Also, as I mentioned before, another one is people kind of go overboard with committees and mentioning what committees are going to be in their nonprofit. At which point you may have committees for things that you don't even need. You may have a personnel committee and you don't have anyone hired, and you don't plan on hiring someone for your first 3 years, but now you have a personnel committee that you have to have because your bylaws state it. Keep in mind, your bylaws are a legal document and people are going to hold you accountable to it. So if somebody has an issue with maybe something that your board has done or maybe your executive director has done, and they find that you didn't follow something in your bylaws, you would be legally obligated to follow it. So they could have a case against you and your organization if indeed you don't follow your bylaws. It's a legal document, so be sure that you're very not detailed as in like details of how many committees you have, but very specific about your language in there. One of the big tips I can give you too is the difference between shall and may, right? You shall do something means you are going to have, you are going to do this. You shall hire an executive director means you are hiring an executive director, and if you don't, then you are in violation of your own bylaws, right? So you may hire an executive director, or you may have a committee, a subcommittee based on hiring personnel, right? In which case you may not even want to have that. So that was kind of redundant. I said may, and anyway. So differentiate between your bylaws and your P&Ps, and that's going to be important. Keep your bylaws basic. All right? Again, there are links below to the sample bylaws that I have on my website at nonprofitally.com, and just go to nonprofitally.com/bylaws, and you will get an entire blog post that goes line by line through each section of each article, each section of your bylaws, along with the recommended, though not required, language of the IRS. And on the right-hand side of that blog post, you're going to see there's 4 or 5 different sample bylaws that you can download. They're in Word format, so you can edit them and you can use them to make your own bylaws. Great. I hope this podcast was helpful. Again, there's a blog post down there, and you'll see a link to an ebook that is on its way for you to read, and that ebook is going to be even more detailed than this video and the blog post, and that will also have links to sample bylaws as well as more information on what you want to include in each of these sections, as well as other sections you may want to include. So I would highly recommend, if indeed you are going through your bylaws, go ahead and download that ebook. It will take you through every step of the process you need to do in order to have bylaws that are going to be with your organization for the duration of your organization. So if you like this video, please give me a rating down below. Give us a thumbs up. We always like that. And subscribe. We are coming out with videos all the time. Again, I'm Steve. I'm with Nonprofit Ally. Thank you so much for watching this video, and have a good day.